Okay. Good evening. I'm going to call this meeting of the Recreation Youth Commission meeting to order. As required by law, the town may audio or video record this meeting. Any person intending to either audio or video record this open session is required to inform the chair. Nobody recording? Don't see anybody. Are you here to speak, or are you just here to observe?
You know what? I spoke to Eric, and I'm good. I'm
Perfect.
gonna hopefully speak next time.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, thank you.
We're going to go down to CPC list. Did you pass that out, Eric?
Yep, sure. It's just a listing of the priorities that you guys had voted. Underneath the line, you could just kind of hand.
And just to be clear, we didn't vote those. We put.
You voted the order.
Yeah.
Did we vote the order?
Yep, we did. The top four. The bottom two were
Okay.
just add-ons of what we called wants, not needs.
I didn't do it.
Oh,
I'm sorry, I don't remember.
Piles.
I was up
Yeah,
against
we voted on priority.
Okay.
It's just a simple list.
2004. Where did that one come from?
That one was brought up at the end of the meeting,
Okay.
after the guy spoke to us about it. Remember the guy came in talking about Sand Pond?
No. The fields revitalization.
Oh, the 204? That was brought up. It was in my notes as a want. We didn't vote on it as a
Okay.
priority or anything.
Okay, so those bottom two are one.
Did I
The
give
first
some?
four, the one we showed support for.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that's why I put that line there.
Okay, so we have Sand Pond Restroom Project additional funding. My biggest question on that is that stick or cement? Because I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Eric, that we get any bids for stick built, did we?
No. And I think, in my opinion, at this point, we go back to the precast concrete. I know we mentioned it for Jared last meeting, too, the restrooms for concrete. I think we're more likely to get a bid on that, for sure.
Oh, I don't
You
think
know,
there's, I don't think.
I'm waiting on an updated quote from Shea Concrete on those.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Powers.
Good evening, Chairman Grandpa.
Chairman Grandpa. Better than Jose.
On the stick.
Jose's off the record.
All right. Mr. Powers, would you like to pull up a seat? We're gonna go right,
Sure.
we're gonna go right to it under public announcements, discussion.
Good evening, everybody. There's a text in there from me, I think, saying I'm running late. I apologize.
Didn't get it.
Sorry for my,
Did you hit the send
I'm gonna
button?
find out which John got that then. Good evening, everybody. Sorry for my tardiness. Just correct the record for the minutes there, please. So my understanding is you folks are looking to have a conversation generally with how projects may work through the administrative section of the government. And I know you have then specifically some priorities that you folks were working on. I'd be more than happy to stick around for that part of the conversation. And I don't know if our rec director has told you, but we, the town government, have already started through our departments the process for preparing for fiscal year 2026 and specifically through the 2025 annual town meeting. I don't have the number of days I've stopped doing that count, but it's fast approaching. And we do this where we have not even yet officially closed the books for 24 and have not officially launched for 25. So I've given guidance to the department heads on my expectations of information that will be coming from them over the next month. We're resuming monthly department head meetings and talking about everything that goes into the warrant and the town meeting process, and certainly for fiscal year 25. So if it helps, I can tell you that the items that I've asked them to provide me narrative on, in no particular order, would be capital needs. So this is a report that's due to me by the August 23rd. It's my first preliminary report that I'm going to build off of in talking with the select board in September about our process. Capital needs, including new projects for fiscal year 2030, which would be the new 5th year of the capital plan, as well as any updates on fiscal year 2026 projects. I think you folks know that recreation is not on the capital plan because you've typically been relying upon community preservation funds which is a separate process. To that end, however, I've asked the department heads to give me information on community preservation projects that they anticipate seeking funding for in the fiscal year 2026 round of applications, which I know generally occurs in the late summer, early fall. And then any anticipated dollar amounts for salaries, wages, and expenses, any topics which may require town meeting articles separate from capital, community preservation, etc. And then a brief explanation of any other needs that the department itself may need. So that's how we kick off planning for the fiscal year for the town meeting. And for me, a large part of that is what would be considered projects. So I'll stop there for pause and any questions.
And I'm going to ask one and then pass it around the table.
Yep.
So your meeting requesting projects is August 23rd, correct?
Yeah, so what it is I've referred to it as a single sheet, so that can be double-sided, but a single sheet narrative to give me a level set expectation of what we're staring down for fiscal year 2026. I'm sure you've all heard that both me and the board, select board, are contemplating if there's going to be a special town meeting. My emphasis has always been on special, and that will be, right now, we've been targeting a date in late November. This wouldn't cover any of that. It's more the annual planning separate from that. So 2-page narrative due in August, and that's going to help me start framing out discussions with the select board in early September.
I guess I'm just curious as to how do we meet the 10/1 deadline to get applications into CPC if if this is the 23rd, that gives you 5 weeks to, unless I'm misunderstanding something.
No, I don't think you're misunderstanding anything. I will look in the direction of your colleague that ties into community preservation generally and say, projects and funding that have gone through CPC in at least the last 4 years, it would not be a project of the Rec and Youth Commission per se. It would be a project related to the Recreation Department.
However we're going to
Yeah.
However we're going to label it, we are usually in the final stages come August, not the beginning stages.
Well, so for me, I wouldn't say that it's beginning stages for us either. What we're talking about is the CPC's preliminary application, traditionally due on or before October 1st, and then there's a process that leads to the final application. So my understanding, and I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong, is the application that gets submitted by a department head and or administration. It goes around for committees to endorse, such as this committee and others, and that gives notice on October 1st before final applications in early December.
Early December, but it's not necessarily final applications. What it is an overview in early December of all the information that comes in the first. Sometimes there's placeholders put in place.
Yeah.
So
for me, what I'm trying to build off of this directive for department heads is what sort of warrant am I looking at? So if I have a general understanding of applications that are being pursued through CPC, recognizing that it's nowhere near the final process, anywhere from, I would say, 9 to 15 articles cover CPC. So that's really just to get a sense of the bandwidth of the warrant itself. Same thing with capital projects. If there's any capital projects coming up in 26, the way I've been trying to do it lately is what's the funding source, and that dictates the number of articles.
So I guess we get the gold star as a record, because I'm not gonna speak for everybody, but I was always under the impression for best and final October 1st.
We've always submitted our, not final applications, but our full applications October 1st.
Yeah,
And
so
then
which
we
is
wait-
okay, I mean,
Yeah.
that's, we're early, it goes back to what we were saying earlier about 5 minutes early is better than.
So I don't disagree. He'd be the one to give out gold stars because it's his process.
No, actually,
Okay.
nothing has changed.
So,
Yeah.
that's it for me, I'm gonna open it up to
Thank you. Yeah.
Leah?
I suppose I have a question regarding CPC. So if we were to, we would need to have our ducks in a row, per se, by August 23rd should then be approved for, that's
I
where I'm
think-
getting a little lost, that's where I
But-
just wanna
yeah.
get some clarification.
I think it's, it's more of a general sense of what projects we would like to see move forward, not all the details of every project, correct? It's just.
So then I guess
you know.
that's where I get confused on how how are we to submit something to the CPC if we can't gather all that information?
Oh, that's it, okay.
Do you know what I'm saying?
I understand the question, and I'm not trying to be coy. The reason why I'm looking in the direction of Dave Nixon is probably 4 years ago, Dave.
That's right.
CPC through the chair came to me and said, paraphrasing, we have a problem with applications. There are different applications that are coming in where they're seeking funds for a town project, and they're not the town, or they don't have span of control. So that encouraged me, I was gonna say forced, to reach out to all my department heads and said, if you're working with any commissions, committees, and boards, or any other agencies, please be advised that CPC is expecting the town administrator and/or a designee to be the lead applicant and the backup applicant. And so, for me, that wouldn't change anything that you all do. You're still advocating for recreation-based projects that the director has to account for, if successful, has to manage from procurement through construction or installation, et cetera. And that dovetails with what the Community Preservation Committee and I, through the chair, have talked about for the last 4 years. So, if I may, later on in your agenda, you have a list, if it's accurate, thank you, of 6 projects that you're contemplating perhaps for CPC funding? Is that what that list gets to?
4 of those are prioritized, those are
Those are.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
perfect world.
Okay, but 6 items prioritized, and a number of which may go for CPC funding. Yep, that's where, for me, the gold star comes in. You folks have been talking about this as a public body tied to recreation and youth. You've been talking about them at your public meetings, and whether or not we have a robust response from the community is, I won't call it irrelevant, but it's immaterial because you're still doing all of this work and there's a record of everything. What helps me down the line is, well, an example would be, why are we doing a sand pond restoration project for additional funding? Right away, I'd say, well, this is a committed project of the recreation director that's been vetted by and through the Rec and Youth Commission. And when you talk about additional funding, what I'll really say is we're trying to get the damn project done. And so this is absolutely something that we, the town, would want to see go forward. So you've done all the vetting, you've done a lot of the advocacy, and I think most importantly for me, as it relates to committee, public notice. So that if anyone wants to claim, wait a second, where did this come from? This has come from a number of meetings on warm nights in a smaller room in our community center.
Leah?
Go ahead,
No.
we'll move on.
Frank?
So we have to put a dollar sign next to every project, or
Yep.
what the
Right.
cost is, and based on that dollar amount, we may drop it as a project or go forward.
Sure.
We want to do the infield, and we've done that before.
Yep.
So who's going to get the bids? We know the good guys, well, I shouldn't say that, we know who does a good job.
Strike the comment, right?
Yeah, strike the comment.
Well, so for that, I'll go back to, I think, a document that you would have all been given or are familiar with, the committee handbook. So these aren't my words, this is what's existed forever. Procurement does not happen outside of administration. There's a chief procurement officer that the board identifies in the charter. I rely upon staff. I can, either staff or I can rely upon you folks to weigh in. But this is heavily regulated procurement processes that wouldn't just come to a public body like this. There's a whole nother process that goes on. What we're looking for, when you talk about, the dollars
Yes.
and what it costs, and if you decide not to go forward, I would not interject myself in that process, other than to say, if it really is a commitment of Rec Department and Rec and Youth Commission for the public, ask administration, we might have additional funds available, or companion projects. But the procurement itself has to go through the regulated procurement process.
I don't believe Frank was referring to procurement.
All right.
I think he was referring to baby step one.
Estimate.
That how do you come up with an estimate or
Sorry,
something?
thank you,
That's
yeah.
what I
Right,
meant,
Frank?
yeah.
So,
That's
thank you.
correct.
On my many whiteboards, I've talked about this with department heads, and I can share it with you folks after this meeting and going forward. So what we look at in administration for a project that's probably gonna be procured is you have the concept or the idea. Then the next thing you need to do is spec it out. Then the next thing you need to do is determine the cost based on those specs.
So we determine the cost,
You'd be analyzing all that, I would think, absolutely.
and the cost we'll get from town hall?
No.
No?
No, not necessarily, no.
Prospective
Um,
vendors.
Contract.
And I apologize.
Contractor. Who contacts the contractor, is what I'm saying?
It should be the relevant staff member, so the director, and it should also be the director working through administration. So both the assistant town administrator and I have an obligation under our job descriptions to do procurement, and we support all of our department heads, but also expect them to be proficient at that.
Okay.
So that's who would be looking for it. And I apologize, I went down that rabbit hole because I heard bids and whatever.
Yeah, just so we're all on the same page.
No, I appreciate that.
There's,
yeah.
there's multiple
Absolutely.
steps before we even get near.
Yeah.
To even
A
know how much we have
CPC
to ask
request.
for.
So on that chart, if you will, and it's not my great thinking, this really comes out of the procurement training. Concepts and ideas, in my opinion, certainly can sprout from the mind of the director, but would absolutely come from a public body such as you all, either you all coming up with it and or the public saying, hey, why don't we do this? And so for me, that's where I want to solidify the role of this particular body in that matter. You folks are generating the concepts and the ideas. It's not to say that there wouldn't be something that comes from administration on something, but that would be more along the lines of an infrastructure project like the bathrooms or whatever. But as far as where do the ideas come from, we would look for them to come through the public body process, and that's you folks.
Frank?
That's it.
Van?
I don't see any changes that we need to make from what we've been doing right along. Okay? I think the only thing that we have to do right now is if we look at these projects, we need to get, for example, the Brooks Park infield replacement. We need somebody who is in the position to do so, get us some numbers. Once we get those numbers, we can then put together the specs or whatever has to be
Sure.
done to get that project moving forward. That's not within our purview, okay?
Yep.
We gotta get a contractor in here or somebody in here to say, to do that project, we need X number of dollars. We then take
Right.
that number, pass it on to Eric. Eric then passes it on to the CPC, and by October 1st, then we're ready to go.
Right.
That's pretty much, we build in a contingency and everything else.
Excellent.
So we're ready to go.
Yeah.
My concern, Joe, is that we've got all these projects listed. And for the last couple of years, we've had other projects that have been approved by town meeting, such as the bathroom down at the Potter Memorial Field. There's $170,000 sitting out there that's been approved, and there's been no action whatsoever in terms of where are we with that. People need to know
Sure.
what the timeline is going to be. We've got San Juan, which we talked about.
Yep.
We've got the fencing down at Potter Memorial Field, which was approved
That's brand
2
new.
years ago. And because there was no action taken in terms of the bidding process and the RFPs and all that other stuff that goes on, that project went from $50,000 to $107,000. And it's been a waste of money as far as I'm concerned, that nobody got going on it to get the movement necessary to get a contractor in here and get those projects indeed continued and replaced or constructed or whatever. So, there were projects hanging. Now we've got 4 more. Are they gonna hang as well? As we go down the road? And do we have personnel? Do we have people who are gonna step up and aggressively say, let's get going on these projects? We've got all these that are not done. We've got 4 more or 3 more to go. We need to get some broad action from somewhere, someplace to get these, once they're approved by town meeting, let's go with them. What's the process there? Who does that? And when is that done?
If I can start first.
Yeah, sure.
Everyone in my span of control does that. So what you're talking about, for my purposes, what you may refer to as projects, we look at as procurement. everything you just said requires the process of procuring, which requires funding. I've said to my department heads, the select board, FinCom, anybody for years, the toughest question to ask is, do you have the money? If the answer is yes, that's the easy part. So when I came in as not permanent, but administrator under contract in February of 2021, I presented the board with what I saw over the previous 3 years is a backlog of more than 100 projects. So I am thrilled to tell you that we've reduced that greatly to where, if memory serves correctly, the number of projects with no action taken yet, and the vast majority of those were just funded at the 2024 annual town meeting, was less than 30. So who looks for this? I would ask in that instance, who was the project lead? If it was recreation, I met with the department heads prior to town meeting and right after town meeting saying, you had projects that were articles of funding at town meeting. The money, depending upon how it's sourced, if it's capital and it's free cash, it's not available till July 1. So I've directed the department heads, start prioritizing your projects based on what you know is the cost, the scope, and the size, how much work's going to be done. So we still operate under the same procurement laws that basically say more things other than not. A bathroom may be construction, which is a different law, but more often than not, we're talking about Chapter 30B procurements. And what that says is if you have a project or a procurement that is less than $10,000, the director knows in every instance, and the director is what I'm going to use for department heads all, not just the director. They know that they have the bandwidth, they have the funding. So they know the pre-procurement process they go through with my department in finance to get the funding certified that it's available. They then reach out with their description of what they're looking for anyone that can do the job that falls under 10,000. 10,000 to 50,000, all we need is to seek 3 quotes. We only need to get 1 back in. So if you're doing it that way, so the less than 10,000, you can bang out pretty quickly, but you may have to wait for the funding to be expended, July 1. 3 quotes, same thing. I would definitely want them to use May, June, early July to seek those solicitations. The bigger ones that, in my opinion, should start as early as possible are, we're talking greater than $50,000. We're usually talking request for proposals, which is very regimented, or a higher dollar amount, simply an invitation for bids. And that's where we say, look, we need a widget, and we expect to pay $200,000 for it. The lowest bid that comes in, we're going to do it. That's all on the project owners that were seeking the funding. So what I talk to my team about constantly, and we're going to reinforce this with our monthly department head meetings, is if you're pursuing it, what is your bandwidth? What projects do you have that are languishing? Can we rely upon any other departments to assist? And so some of the things you've talked about, Van, may be more maintenance. So I may have to reach out to the DPW director. Or it may be something a little bit simpler that anyone else could do. But by and large, whoever's seeking the funding for the project owns the project. And again, with a backlog of over 120 projects when I first started, ongoing special and annual town meetings, so it's still growing, to have that number be less than 30, I think is remarkable. And I thank me, but I really thank the assistant town administrator and all the department heads for getting that done. And we partner very well with finance to make sure we know the funding's there, we have the scope, get it in and get it out.
Anything else?
I could just update too. So like the 2 old open, if you want to call them old open projects, being the.
If I could, for me, an old open project is something greater than 24 months.
Yeah.
So if it's within 24 months, we're getting it out. If it's greater than 24 months, yeah, that is an old project. Go ahead.
So one is Sand Pond restroom, which is what we're asking for additional funding for because the stick-built restroom, as you guys know, didn't come through. So we have to go for the concrete restroom. As far as senior memorial and Potter bathroom.
Well, Eric, if I could, on Sand Pond, wasn't it also, we had gone through the procurement process, but didn't get, either didn't get bids or the bids weren't overfunded?
Yeah, we did it
so
3 times.
So we did the work.
Yeah.
Then it is, did the marketplace respond, or is the marketplace so out of whack? Correct, yep.
And the same thing with the fencing, which is, we just got a new article for the senior memorial fencing this year.
Right, 2024.
So that one's going to be worked on now. The last one is Senior Memorial and Potter Restroom. That one we put out to bid for the engineering design, which we have done. They said they're gonna have it to me actually by Friday. That will equip us to be able to put together an RFP for the restroom
Right.
itself
Yep.
going forward. So that's where we are with that.
Good, thank you.
And then the three that we just got in May, I just completed all the pre-procurement paperwork to get those rolling.
Yep.
So,
The biggest boondoggle right now is Sand Pond.
yeah,
That one's been out
Oh,
there
yeah,
since
absolutely.
before you
Yep.
we
were,
just need that, yeah, that's a new.
whatever the pre-time was.
The various iterations that I've had for 5 years. I will tell you that I drive by San Juan every day, and I've taken the liberty several times of driving in, looking at stuff and just checking it out, so.
Mhm.
But I am familiar with all those projects.
All set, Van?
I'm good, thank you.
David?
I'm all set. The town administrator and the chair of the CPC went to a room and duke it out.
Phyllis?
I'm good. I was at a question about the RFP, but I think it got explained in the invitation to bid.
If I could
Good.
generally on that, and for our purposes, the request for proposal process generally takes 6 to 8 weeks. The complexity there is because we're doing criteria of highly advantageous, et cetera, where we're trying to determine the best possible response. Whereas invitation for bid might go 4 to 6 weeks. It's more detailed of a notice, but that one is simply, what's the low bid? So when you think of those projects, if it's RFP, it can take close to 2 months, start to finish. Getting it out to the marketplace, getting it back and evaluated. And then usually that's a contract executed by the select board. IFB is a little bit shorter, but still has to be.
Who does all that work, Joe? Putting all
Yeah,
that together?
who writes the RFP?
So the RFP, we have administration. So we have standards that we rely upon. We have standard contracts that we use. So it is, and I say this in the best possible way, it is essentially plug and play. The most difficult or the most critical component of any procurement is the description of what you want, or the scope of services, or the scope of project. So what we've been trying to do over the last couple of years is make sure the language that we're using, either in the application to CPC or capital, or in the article itself, or in the explanation, can then be copied and dropped into the necessary scope of services.
Well, having said that, we've built some concrete bathroom facilities, and there must be specs out there for, like,
Absolutely,
there
yeah.
must be a file of specs.
Yeah.
Why couldn't we take those specs and begin to process those ASAP?
That's what we do, yeah.
To do that.
But we have to go through the pre-procurement paperwork first.
Yes.
Yeah.
So do you want me to go over that procurement process generally?
Sure.
So the procurement process that I had established in the fall of 2020 is forms, right? No surprise. So we have a pre-procurement form. That's a form that I created. It's a PDF form and it's writable. And we should send it to the commission so they see
sure.
it. But in that, it prompts them for every kind of question. Who are you? What's your department? What is your funding source? So that's usually 2024, Article 37. What is the anticipated cost of this particular procurement? So if you got 450,000, but you're doing a design work, you might say we're looking to spend upwards of 75,000. So that's the cost of the scope of services. What's the total available? The total dollar amount. Then in the middle of that, there's about 4 paragraph.
Yeah, small.
Free form where the department head describes what they're looking to procure. Now, doesn't have to be anything ritzy, and like I said, it's usually a copy and paste. And then the most important part, and this is where the select board was very particular, and I can understand why. Then it goes to the finance, so it goes to the assistant town administrator where she looks at it and says, this is correct. I'm gonna send it on for signatures. The chief financial officer, aka the finance director, has to say, yes, the purpose that they've stated here is covered in the article that they've talked about, and the balance is enough. So they say, yes, funding is available. When I look at the fact that the ATA has reviewed it, so that when I look at the fact that the director has submitted it, the assistant town administrator responsible for daily procurement has reviewed it, and the finance director has said funding's available, I sign it automatically. That then goes back to the director and says, everything you said you wanted, you're approved. You've described it properly, you've told us the method you're gonna use, and most importantly, you have sufficient funding to do it, so go ahead and do it. The next document that usually comes back is a standard contract that we use, written by our law firm, and it covers every kind of scenario, including construction. That gets sent out to the vendor in question. If it's $75,000 or less, it comes back to me to sign and execute, so that can go quicker. I'm gonna put it out there. If anybody wants things to go quicker, talk to the select board about increasing that dollar limit, if you want, but that, you know, because if it's over 75, that has to go in front of the select board, and that usually is a 2-week turnaround, where for me, it's as soon as I get it. The last document is one that I do not agree with, I'll put it out there, but it was the original procurement form that department heads used before I came here. And what it basically does is it restates everything we've done. So you have a pre-procurement form that's critical, the contract that gets it done, and then confirmation of what was done. And all of that, if I'm signing, I share with the select board and I announce the contract at their next meeting. Otherwise, there's a cover memo, typically from the assistant town administrator explaining the process. More often than not, a cover memo from me saying, I agree with all this. Board, please execute the enclosed contract. And they have all of those documents. So that's allowed us to get rid of that, but that's how we do it. Pre-procurement form, I'll let you speak to the benefit of it. I think it's critical, but that dictates everything. And the sooner we get that, the sooner everything else follows.
That's the pathway.
Correct, absolutely. If you have the two signatures of the chief procurement officer saying this is legitimate, and the chief financial officer saying you've got the money, there shouldn't be any impediments.
And that's why it's so important.
Absolutely, right. Yep, forms matter.
So can I ask a probably dumb question? The RFP, so eventually gets to the procurement officer to write, and then who reviews it? I don't want to assign blame or anything like that, but I recall when they put the bathrooms in at Brooks Park, they were, okay, so how does something like that happen, and how do you stop it from happening?
First of all, no.
I'm not
No silly questions, and I mean that sincerely, especially when it comes to something so arcane, and I just want to make sure I didn't call anybody when I hit my phone. Municipal procurement, state procurement is not fun. It's just regulatory. That was the case study that I relied upon when I came to town. So we're talking about the kind of off-the-shelf bathrooms that were not ADA compliant, were not anything. That was something that preceded me. And something that we guard against with what I just talked about, you know, the forms and the process. So requests for proposals, because we're using criteria, and it's qualitative criteria according to the Commonwealth. You have highly advantageous, neutral, not advantageous, or not applicable. You want to get an A or an HA, because an A gives you 1 point, and HA usually gives you 2 points. Depending upon the complexity of the project, it may be the director and the assistant town administrator scoring the proposals. That can take about 2 weeks. And then they send out everything over to me. I evaluate their work. I evaluate their score sheet. I don't do my own, and that's for a legal purpose, but I do evaluate everything. And I have to make a determination, is the vendor with the most responsive and responsible bid or proposal. Those are the state laws. Responsive says they've demonstrated they can do the work, and responsible says that they're the best at doing the work. That makes my job easy. If you are the most responsive and responsible, we must pick you. Those bathrooms, had we ever done that again, would never have survived that process.
We've never done it before. That was the first.
Yeah, I wasn't even here for that. What I'm saying, though, is the creation of the bathrooms, aside from the installation, the construction and all that, my understanding is that there were specs that were created, specifications. So in our pre-procurement, that would have dictated what they're going to look like. My understanding is Others in the town, no one present and here, said, you know what, we're gonna go an easier route, we're gonna buy them from this big box store. You can't do that, because that's not what you described in the process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so-
And so, the more complex the project, the more likely there might be, and this is more for, if you have to design, so say you were going to build, a football
Let's use the
stadium.
splash pad.
So splash pad's not big enough. So I want to go a little bit bigger, but we can
Okay.
talk about that generally. But if you were going to do a really big construction, because that's minimal construction, and
good
give,
to know.
yeah, absolutely, yeah, that's a fairly easy process to go
You're
through.
on record.
Absolutely, and I don't know where the cameras are, but I'll look at it and say it.
Behind my head, behind it.
Perfect. Point being, and so we in administration obviously are going through this with wastewater projects. I'm trying to think of an example. I don't think you were on a designer selection committee yet.
No.
Okay.
Nope.
So an example would be, if you have a big enough construction project, separate from a splash pad, right? This is not a project the town is contemplating. Say we wanted to build a standalone pool building and pool. Right.
Hold on.
Right, exactly. The town is not doing that. Mark the time, I'll repeat it. The first thing you'd want to do is get a designer. You need someone to design the building and the pool and all of that. That is a standalone process. It's a designer selection process. Request for proposal, but it's so complex that it would be the director, it would be the assistant town administrator. Typically, I'd bring in another department head like the DPW director or others that have done construction. And then I bring in a department head that has nothing to do with construction. And the 5 to 6 to 7 of them evaluate and recommend who I should select to design it. And so that's an RFP process that's for design only. That process then helps us greatly on the fairly standard. We would do bids for the construction of that building and that pool. So splash pad generally can fall under, potentially under 30B, supplies and services. There may be an element of construction, which would be a different statute. Most of that doesn't change how we do things, because it's still, how are you gonna buy it? What are you looking to buy? And where's the money? And so it's some form of request for proposal. It might be 3039M versus 30B, but still the same kind of steps. So a splash pad, and I'm just throwing it out there, say of a 20 by 30 foot footprint, is fairly straightforward. The complexities for me would come in the infrastructure project, which would be, how do you bring the water infrastructure to that splash pad? And so that might be two distinct, where splash pad, as a hypothetical, would be through the rec director, but the water infrastructure might be through Public Works and the water department. And so we could do those concurrently. He's getting the splash pad, they're getting the apparatus ready to serve the splash pad.
Okay.
Frank?
On RFPs, I think the RFP, when it is ready to go, send out, should come back to this commission to see if there's any, if it's correct. That's exactly what we want.
I usually
I
send
couldn't
them
agree.
out.
Yeah.
Well, things were changed in the RFP for the pickleball courts, I can tell you that. I'll
So-
give you an example. It was spelled out, what would the town hall, repair armor using the armor crack repair system. It's a specific system. There's only 8 companies that do that in the state, and 4 of them won't take municipal jobs. And that came back to us, repair all minor cracks. Big difference.
I can't speak to this, the particulars of that, but I want to emphasize, I would disagree that the RFP comes back to any public body separate from the select board for approval. Rather, you should be working with the director on, these are the contents of what's going in the request for proposals. I can dive deeper into that issue on that particular project, but
Well, I saw what went out and I saw what came back.
I couldn't speak to it now, but I'll research it.
So, just so I'm clear, if if Eric distributed the RFP after it's done, and there's comments, concerns, just bring them to Eric's attention?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
So if it's supposed to
Yep.
be an A pin and it's a B pin, make sure they change it back to an A pin.
Correct.
And I'm
Yep.
being as simple as you can be.
correct, yeah, absolutely.
Um,
So what the expectation would be that we'd want to capture that up front anyway, because that is the scope of services. That is the large part of what fills out the non-standard elements of the request for proposal, the project specifics.
Yeah, anything else? David,
Also,
Phyllis?
I'm good.
So, elephant in the room,
Thank you very much.
the splash pad.
Yep.
That's question number one, and then I'll go with my second one after.
So I would love to turn the tables and say, I have no idea. And hey, Rec and Youth Commission, what's going on with the splash pad? So I'll let you all talk amongst yourselves in my presence, so to speak. What I heard was, through the rec director, there was a straightforward, in my opinion, recreation-based procurement that's being contemplated for 2025 annual town meeting. So when I heard that, I said, that's a piece of cake. The idea has already been formulated by Rec and Youth Commission. So let me say that again. I was of the understanding that that idea had already been formulated by Rec and Youth Commission. If that's incorrect, no offense, that's not on me, that's on the information I was provided. So that's why I want to stick around for these projects and hear the discussion, but also talk about it anyway. The thing I want to put out there of a critical nature per se, meaning criticism, but not derogatory in any way, shape, or form. I understand that as the director and the commission went through the process of evaluating splash pad in particular, a survey was conducted asking where it should be sited. So I have two objections to that. You're looking to site it on town property, and the town administrator was not aware. I'll let the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of you figure out where that disconnect may have been. But I would have thought, and this gets to the heart of a public body such as yours, I would have thought you would, and maybe you did, I just didn't see it. Did you ask the community if they want a splash pad? Because I read the results, and some of the results were, I don't care where you put it, we don't want a splash pad.
They were mixed.
Yeah.
The results, the survey came back, and they were mixed in terms of those who were proponents
Yep.
for a splash pad, and those who said, we got some beautiful beaches down there, why do we need a splash pad?
Yep.
Those were the major comments that I can remember that
Sure, yeah.
we dealt with. I guess from my perspective, I think there were some misunderstandings, I guess, from the meeting that maybe you had with David and Maria, that you were going to take over the splash pad as part of your initiation, your role and responsibility as TM, and that
TA. Don't go too far with that.
TA, and that you were going to do it all, and you were going to be responsible for seeing to it that it's done under your direction, if you will, in terms of location of the splash pad and so on and so on. So we're getting some mixed messages in terms of where we are with the responsibility of a splash pad and whether or not, what our role is.
Sure.
As a commission, where do we fit in the scheme of things in terms of that project and any other project? Joe,
Sure.
Are you in fact going to be the initiator, or are we going to do the work and present it as we normally do with our CPC articles? If that's the case,
Sure, yeah.
we canceled one of our meetings, meeting with a contractor, because there was that confusion that was out there. And we decided not to have the meeting
Sure.
because the notion was, if Joe's gonna do it, let him do it, okay?
Sure, so all I do
Yeah.
is manage staff
Yeah.
and administer procurement. And that's what I've spent the first however many minutes talking about with you folks.
Very informative.
But I want to go back to something. You've talked about a meeting that occurred with the director, a member, and or vice chair?
Yes.
Thank you. With the director, a member, and the vice chair. That had followed on a meeting with a member. And I'm not going to look around the table. I'll leave that to, oh, sorry, Mr. Chairman. I'm not going to look around the table. I'll let you folks figure that one out.
Don't have
The
to.
way I took it, Van, if I could.
Well, let me
It was
interject.
David that was at that
Let me
meeting.
interject
Okay,
here.
let me
Let me
listen.
One at a
clear
time,
the-
one
let
at
me
a time.
clear
May I
the
just
air.
make one last
Sure,
statement?
go ahead.
And that led me to understand that a project had been initiated. Not that I was initiating.
We had some
Right.
preliminary discussions.
No, no, I
about the
understand, yeah,
splash pad.
yeah.
Hold on, Dan.
Yeah. That to me, I agree, there's several missteps and miscommunications. For my purposes, I took it as, I understood it to be, that the Rec and Youth Commission, through your public process, and the Rec Director have initiated a project. So allow me to explain myself. I got super excited about that. I don't care about a splash pad. I have no opinion whatsoever of whether we need one or not. That's not my responsibility in the short term. And I do not try to be Lord Joe who says, well, wait a second. I don't need a splash pad. I have miles of coastline. That's not for me to say. It's for me to say, how are we going to get it done if that's how the process leads? The excitement was, it was so early in the process. It was the week of town meeting where I said we have enough time to do the design and scope work that I think you were talking about with vendors. That's got to go through procurement to some degree because there needs to be funding and there needs to be a regulated process and a contract. There's enough time to pursue. And one of the advocates I assumed was going to make sure there would be funding through the Community Preservation Committee. So for me, I thought this is great. You folks are doing this and we have enough time because it does take significant amount of time to prep. So for me, I have it to understand, and I think the last meeting that I had, which was the director, a member, and the vice chair, I immediately went, I think there's something going on here, I'm going to yield. And I have yielded since that time. I've had side conversations with others, but for me, I thought it was an initiated project of Rec and Youth Commission for the public and with the director.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have one question. Is the town still trying to hire a town engineer?
Always. And a surveyor for what it's worth. But we absolutely need a town engineer. Now, having said that, we have a great firm, in my opinion, VHB, that provides us with any manner of either stormwater, roadways, or other projects, and any number of smaller engineering firms that we could rely upon. But I would give my eye teeth for a town engineer.
Yeah, because we try to hire a town engineer and we got no input
Right.
whatsoever.
Yep. It's incredibly
Nobody-
difficult to
nobody-
find and fill.
Yeah.
Yep. But like I said, town engineer is critical. We'd love for that town engineer to bring a surveyor.
Yeah.
Because that would just further expedite everything we do. Not everything, a large part of what we do on procurement for sure. So if anybody knows anybody,
I'd just like to clarify one thing before we move on to the next topic. Since 2006 through 2021, this commission, for the most part, there's been a couple changes, have done 25, I would call them highly successful projects. In doing the process of coming up with the idea, asking Eric as the department head, because he's been here the whole time, to talk to, we'll just say, a fence. Talk to a fence company to get an idea of what we should put in for a price to go for funding. And then once it's voted at CPC, once it's voted at ATM, it gets passed off to who's ever in charge of the project.
yep.
Is that still the way?
So for me, the only thing I would challenge is the end date of 2021.
Because the sheet I had only went to 2021.
Okay, all right, good. Yeah, no,
It didn't have 22, 3, and 4, yes.
can
So-
we put this on the record? Thank you.
It was
I would agree with what you've said.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna bore you with it per se, but here's one of my favorite, single sheet, double-sided. And so I didn't intend to launch it per se. And when I talked to a fellow colleague about it today, they said it sounded like a thesis paper, and I said, well, old habits die hard. So the title of it is Employees and Committees, a dichotomy creating friction. And so that's not this group at all, but it is the nexus between any number of references to employees, including the director, that appear throughout the charter that make the town administrator responsible, versus additional commentary under Chapter 7, of which you're one of the 13 that exists there, but you're one of 8 that intersect with an employee. Friction, and I don't need to go into it in great detail, I'm sure you're all generally aware, but there was an advisory committee under Chapter 7 of the charter that was essentially reconstructed by the select board because they had grossly overstepped with regard to key personnel. That wasn't my statement, that was everybody else's statement. That's not you folks, and it's not any of the other 6 that are referenced here. And what that tells me is, generally speaking, our system works very well. So what I've taken from my thesis, so-called, is what I want to convey as a person that's been asked in the past, Joe, what do you think of Chapter 7? That's appointed committees. Put-um-pa, not much. Meaning there's very little interaction between you all who are appointed by and report to and advise the select board versus Chapters 4 and 5, which is our administrator, and administration. But I've tried to really say it more coherently and louder. There is a critical need for any of the committees that we have under Chapter 7, of which you're one, and the vast other committees that have been informed by the select board that may not appear anywhere other than the committee handbook. Because you folks are the front line. You folks are the public body that gives notice that a meeting is going to occur for these purposes, that it's going to be televised, there could be input, and then equally importantly, there's going to be a permanent record. So committees under Chapter 7, because they advise the select board, because 8 of them intersect with staff, are absolutely critical to getting that idea generation and solicitation going. Absolutely, without question. So to your comment and statement, Mr. Chairman, I would agree with that. Since 2006, with the adoption of the charter straight on through, this committee, however constituted and presently constituted, adds tremendous value. And I will never be the one to say to the board or anybody to get rid of any committee, especially those that were deemed to be so important to put in our Constitution, our charter. So I think with that,
I'm very happy that you clarified.
thank you, because I think that can go a long way towards easing the friction. But to me, there isn't friction here, and certainly not to what we saw, unfortunately, but fortunately, which has been corrected.
We were led to,
Yeah.
unfortunately, led to
Oh,
believe.
it's been clarified.
Yep,
Yeah, we were
Thank
led
you
to
for
believe
that.
otherwise.
Absolutely, yeah.
and
Thank
so,
you.
Thank you for that.
One more clarification. If it's Project A, and I think I just want to make sure, and we decide to move forward with it, are we allowed to ask the director to get somebody to come in to speak with us, to give them ideas on what we should do? Or does that have to come?
so that's the slippery slope. When you're talking about someone to come in, it depends on who that someone is. So if you're thinking consultant, vendor, company, there has to be an agreement between that entity and the town. The town, and this is through procurement, through regulation, and everything, the town would not want any party coming in from the outside offering aid and assistance where they bear no responsibility or liability. So generally speaking, that's what we would call design, or that would be considered, I just drew a blank, I'm trying to look back to my chart on my wall, but that would be consultative. If you're asking the public to come in, and somebody in the public says, so don't have to be a Harwich resident, but I'm a Harwich resident, and you're talking about splash pads, and my company happens to do that. That's a problem for that person, not for you guys. That's great expertise, and if they're willing to give it up for free, shame on that person's company. But if they come before you and say, listen, I represent this company, and we're going to advise you on the splash pad, there has to be a contract agreement of some level. We have to have protections of the town. So it isn't that you can't have that or talk to the director. Rather, I would look to the director and say, be mindful, because every one of my direct reports is bound by state ethics, open meeting law, public records, everything you are and more, and standards of care on representing the town. So no, you're not prevented from doing that, but typically expect that almost everything is some level of procurement. So if you say, hey, director, we'd love to hear from a subject matter expert on subject X. If it's less than 10,000, he has the bandwidth to say, okay, I've got the funding. I don't need a contract per se. We're going to do a purchase order. And using sound business practices, that's the requirement that Eric would be under, that I would be under the state's regulatory process. Under sound business practices, he could turn that around very quickly. But if you're getting into design or specs or anything like that, we would want to have a contract.
I'm gonna dumb this down to the lowest level because
Love
I'm
it.
the one who brought it up. I don't know anything about a splash pad. I don't know what happens when the water goes in the ground. So we just wanted somebody to come in to give us a splash pad 101.
Sure.
Before we even decided if we wanted it.
Sure.
Is that an approved thing, or does that have to go through the?
No, if you're saying you want a subject matter expert to come in and they're not expecting any remuneration from the town, have a blast.
That's exactly
Okay.
what we were
That's
looking
right.
for.
Absolutely, have a blast.
That's,
By the way, I love that price.
yeah, I like that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we just,
Now
We
the-
had that contract available, that contractor available for that meeting.
that's,
Well, I guess that's I have the question on that. So if we were going to bring a splash pad expert in, most likely they would be coming from a company. It wouldn't guarantee that that company would get our
Right.
business.
If they're willing
But-
to offer services free to the town,
Right,
we're willing to take that price.
okay, so
But,
that's
but what you
acceptable.
want to be, mindful of is if they're coming in to give a sales pitch,
Mhm. Which I most likely think it would be along that lines.
so then that puts Eric and I in the short term in a potentially precarious position, and you folks as well. If they want to sell you on a product, no. If you want an expert to tell you, oh, so you want to build a splash pad, here's the process
where
generally.
does the water come from? Where does it go? Where
Right,
does it-
but I would also suggest that if you mention that to Eric and Eric mentions it to me, between the two of us, we have a vast resource of, hey, I'd love to bring in XYZ person who's already done it. It may be a government person, either local or state, but they'll tell you everything and all of their stuff is already done and available. So if you're bringing in an expert, just be mindful, if they're willing to do it for free, cash on the barrelhead. If they're willing to sell you on it and it's greater than 10,000, you might have caused Eric to violate the public procurement laws.
We're not looking for a sales pitch.
No.
Right,
No.
and you can say that.
Right,
So if you're,
Eric can tell
so
us.
if, yeah, so for me, if I can sort of give the scenario, so at your next meeting, the Rec and Youth Commission has put notice out that they're gonna have a public discussion, not necessarily a public hearing, right, but a public discussion, and you're seeking any and all input on splash pad, including anybody that has a subject matter expertise. Please be advised, we're not paying for your expertise. Absolutely.
so just, could Eric call, say, the Yarmouth rec director? And
I
ask
would
them?
highly encourage that.
Okay.
Eric
That makes
could
I know you've
contact,
talked to them already
Yeah.
about it,
could contact the
but
Yarmouth
having them come and talk to
rec
us.
director. I could contact my colleague Bob Rittenauer and say, while they're talking rec, what'd you guys do for procurement? There's the easiest way to do our specs.
Right,
Government is a battleship that takes us forever to turn around, but if we send that PT boat out to steal that information and do it, we're gonna do it.
right. I believe when you reached out to them originally, they were very open with all their information, pricing.
Yarmouth?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
So
absolutely.
that's what I mean.
Yeah.
99% of it was probably already public, absolutely.
Yeah,
Right, of
But it's great
course,
to
of
hear them
course.
presented in that manner.
Right.
So to me, that's a subject matter expert who's a fellow government employee. There's no issue whatsoever with
Yeah,
that.
he's done it before.
Yeah.
Can I ask to put that on next meeting?
Sure, sure.
Thank you.
All right, anything else on this part of the discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll go, and this should be a pretty quick discussion, I would guess.
Mr. Chairman, should I yield my chair or may I remain at the table?
Stay right here, Mr. Town
nice
Administrator.
chair.
You're not getting away that easy. Okay, so what you see here, the four that we have prioritized is 1, 2, 3, 4.
And if I may, prioritize for the next CPC process and fiscal year?
Correct.
Thank you. Yep,
Sand Pond, we already talked about.
yep.
Brooks Park infield has a major problem with the lip, and I'll defer to our grass field expert.
Absolutely, that's a subject matter expert.
Yeah, you're not kidding, there you go. Veterans Memorial, what's that, the bathroom?
No, the pavilion.
That's
Oh, pavilion, I'm sorry, it says right there.
Veteran, yeah, it's out back.
Brooks Park Infield, that's where I met you that day, right?
Yes.
Yep.
And the splash pad project, which we're all familiar with.
Yep.
Just so everybody knows, and I'm just gonna take 2 seconds. I sent Eric half a dozen pictures from a park in Montrose, Colorado. And they had every kind of shade thing you could imagine.
Yep.
Some of them were these funky art looking things, and a few of them were 4 poles with sailcloths stretched from pole to pole with carabiners tying them together. And I'm like, we know those, I mean, I say we know. I can't imagine that those cost anywhere near what the cost of the pavilion we had talked about. Just another option. You know, maybe that one over there times 3 isn't financially feasible, but it's good to know other options.
Yeah.
So that's all. So that's pretty much in a nutshell. I'm gonna go around there. Any changes, any thoughts on those projects, Leah?
No, I don't like the August 23rd date anymore.
don't
I
like
was
what,
thinking we
Leah?
could
I
maybe
didn't hear.
squeeze the splash pad in before the 1st of October, but,
We can always put it in and pull it out, correct?
well,
If I
because it has to
could,
go to
Well, our
the
meeting is
23rd.
after that.
Yeah.
Right.
Our meeting's
I
the
think I already
27th.
know half of Eric's 2-page summary to me. There are 4 CPC projects, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's more than enough. Because what that tells me is I have one of roughly 17 departments. How many projects did you do last year through CPC?
3.
I always anticipate anywhere from 3 to 6 projects from rec.
Okay,
For me, it's simply getting a sense of the number of articles.
okay.
Yeah, you have more than
More
enough time,
general
in my opinion.
information.
Yeah,
I will agree 100%
Yeah.
that there is more than enough time
Yeah,
to get this
absolutely.
in for October.
Yeah, definitely.
Better
Okay,
now.
I feel so much better.
Frank?
The priority, yes, I'll go
Okay.
along with that.
I'm fine with it.
Nope. Phyllis, any questions, comments on?
No, I still need information about.
Oh, of course,
Oh, yeah.
but
Yeah.
this is
That's the
all
next
changed.
step.
Right.
We came into this meeting thinking we needed the book to be closed,
Right.
signed, sealed, and delivered by
Yep.
October
So
1.
we've been overachieving all this time?
Not a problem,
That's because
though.
we've been led down the right road.
Exactly.
John, do we
Making
need
his
a,
life easy.
No, we
is that
voted
it?
it
We
last
already
week.
voted.
so we don't need an official vote again?
We voted it last week.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, may I put a fly in the ointment?
No.
No.
Okay. I would just like to talk about the 2 other projects on your list.
Go ahead.
Just so you know, Joe, those
Yep.
were brought up as, at the end of last meeting as wants, not necessarily needs.
Meaning items number 5 and 6?
Yes.
Perfect.
Yep.
So, have you spoken with the whom I took to be the original proponent of the town ropes course project?
Not since day
Not
one.
since-
Okay, all right. Neither, but I have some background material on that. The fields behind 204 Sisson Road. Is there objection? I was already looking to do a capital project on those fields generally. What I don't want to hear is others saying that we've got, grass behind a town building that can't be used. To me, that could be a capital project, or depending upon the scope of it, may not even require capital. Given that it's a want, but doesn't meet your top 5, any objection if I looked at that further? Because I see a need for the town for fields, generally.
What does our lawn guru say?
Well, what do you have in mind in terms of those fields, Joe? I mean, what is your vision?
No idea yet. That's exactly what I want to analyze. I know. So strike that. I participated in conversations with outside parties that were saying, hey, you have fields behind the old middle school. We'd love to use them. And my response was, sure. Did you look at them? Yeah. There you go. You want to use those? Have a blast. Well, no, we'd need the town to invest. And I said, stop right there. That is not something that's up for discussion yet. No, but what I'm getting to is now that the trailers are gone completely and we have a truer sense of the footprint of open space for athletics or recreation is what I'd want to say behind that building. I want to make sure we're not missing an opportunity to analyze it. I haven't talked to any gurus about lawn care, maintenance, or otherwise. I know exactly who to speak with, and it may be related to either 204 Sisson building itself, it may be related to culture, it may be related to public works, it may be administration.
I'll defer to do we need more fields?
I think we do. I think we keep growing. Just a good example is we're going to be using McPhee Field for the Pop Warner team's going to be using it,
Yep.
renting it through us. They first were very interested in the 204 area. I met them down there just so they could take a look at it, and they said, not yet. But, improving those fields can open up to all kinds of recreation programs in-house as well as bookings out-of-house.
I have a question, and I'll direct this to you
Sure.
too, because I know there's consistent questions about 204 usage and running, where fields generally in the town fall under rec. Would there be a conflict there of it's a 204 space or a rec space?
So for me, no, but I wanted to ask a follow-up question based on that to the chair, and you said "we."
We what?
When you were talking to the director, you said, do we need more fields? Thank you, because my question would be, who's "we"? If you are logically keeping it to recreation, I would absolutely defer to that answer.
Right.
However, I will tell you that Select Board and others have suggested, we, the town, need more spaces. And that's how I would look at it.
Yeah.
And from another point of view, I think, and I'm taking the other hat off, I think, if we had additional fields, softball fields, we have 70 teams coming in. We could bring in 100 teams from all over the country, but we don't have the infrastructure or facilities. Now that we've potentially lost the back, behind us at Bassett Field, we don't know where we're going now with our tournament. So that's a problem. The other thing is that, if I may, Joe, we looked at that field
Behind 204? Yeah.
The softball field. We're ready to invest a large amount of money into it, but it was a field that we decided just is not doable for us because we need a lot of space.
Sure, I get that. Yep.
These new guys that are coming in, they're really banging the ball out there. They just don't have the place.
Van, I still can't try out. No, I appreciate that, and I'm gonna be the tacky one that says, if we build it, they will come. Because that is a philosophy for a lot that we have to offer in Harwich.
Right.
For a nominal investment per se, and the long-term commitment and care, the return's been phenomenal.
So let me just suggest something else, if I may, John, really quickly. I don't understand how Yarmouth is doing all the things they do out there. Now, they're putting up where the old, across from Parker Restaurant.
Captain Parker.
Captain Parker.
The new park.
Yeah, they're doing a whole park in there, a major construction in there. And they're getting all these state grants, recreational grants and so on and so forth. If you go down to Flax Pond, they have a building down there, they have the pickleball courts and so on. They got over $500,000 in grant money, to really spruce that place up and do a heck of a job. Should we consider getting a grant writer to look into some of those issues and see if we can really fund some additional programs with money from the state? I mean, there's a lot of money out there.
Absolutely.
And we're not taking advantage of it.
The space from Captain Parker's, is that where they had the temporary drive-in?
Yes.
Yes.
Is that one? Yeah. So,
Major.
yeah, the town owns that and is improving it?
Yeah.
Thank
There
you.
was a big write-up in the paper the other day in the Cape Cod Times
Yep.
about it. And they've really got a vision that's really gonna make it.
Van, I'm gonna ask, we need to rein this in. This is not on the agenda.
Can I just very
Yeah,
quickly speak though?
but
Yeah.
after that, I'm gonna.
Because the town, general administration and others, we're updating our open space and recreation plan, and that's required for us to go after grants. Because it lapsed, we would not be well received on open space and recreation grants. That's why we're getting it done. That'll be done within the next calendar year. We always look and pursue grants as much as possible. We don't have a grant writer per se. I will put it out there that I am always looking to refine our financial operations, and I would love nothing more than to have a contract administrator and grant writer. So what does that mean? You do a major project, Eric had a contract, he hands it over to the administrator. They keep them on their toes for the life of that contract to make sure they're honoring it. If Eric notices anything, he can report it to them. And people say, well, there's not enough. We have hundreds of contracts. They reside in accounting, and accounting does not have the bandwidth to do that kind of work. To me, you balance that out with a grant writer on the other part of it. So if there's downtime for that contract administrator, they should be pursuing grants.
That's an interesting philosophy. What happens to salary and wages?
David,
Grant is, well, he opened the door.
I know, but I'm trying to keep this.
We have
So
an
let me
agenda.
finish the thought.
Is that your gavel?
You put up there that the grants are there, you can access the grants. That's money to get the project done. What happens to salary and wages?
Okay.
Looking at-
So, not necessarily what I was responding to. There are grants of all sorts for all uses.
Okay,
There are grants that we can access that pay for a study of a splash pad, or the design of a splash pad, or the construction of a splash pad, or anything else. We would not pursue grants, nor do I think they generally exist, for a staff member to staff the splash pad. And if you're talking about the salary and wages of the contract administrator, I would not be looking for anything temporary, and I would not be looking for the contract administrator / grant writer to have that position funded through grants. That would be a commitment of the town, and that would fall through administration. I hope that answered.
it does.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, wrapping up the CPC priority list, there is no new business. I am gonna exercise my right to bring up something that we didn't foresee 48 hours ago.
John, I'm so sorry. Did we actually give an answer on if we were okay with TA kind of taking that, looking at that, following through with that?
The 204?
Yeah, did we, I think we got
We
way
did-
sidetracked.
we-
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
We did not vote that.
Okay, just wanna make sure we don't leave that.
But those are on the want
Want.
list versus
Yeah.
priority.
Right.
And I don't want that to get confused.
With the priority list,
With the
of
priority
course.
list.
Yeah, okay.
And that's not, I mean, we have some pretty, 1, 2, 3, 4 could be some pretty substantial funds.
Good money right there.
Yeah, exactly.
We tend not to
I
over-ask.
I would concur completely.
If I may, very quickly, under the infield replacement for Brooks Park, now that Jared's here, can we get some additional, some quick numbers in terms of what that project might?
He provided those last month, Dan.
Pardon me?
He provided some
Or
numbers
did
last month.
you last month, Jared?
Yeah.
Yep,
Okay, yeah, an approximate.
I gave you the actual.
He gave you the, yes, he gave
Yeah,
you
he
I'll
a,
give you
Okay.
the contract.
we'll get that to you, Van, if you need it.
Thank you.
I could send it to you.
Thank you.
Okay. That being said, Circus Smirkus was held in town last weekend, or whatever it was, Wednesday, Thursday. And I understand it was a huge success, 4 sellouts. Unfortunately, what we thought was going to happen has happened. The field was left in pretty tough shape, and I'll defer to Jared from the Highway Department to give his opinion. I don't want to get into a big, long, drawn-out discussion. I think what we're trying to find out is, through the town administrator, what's the process? I know there's an insurance policy
Right.
that the Children's Place took out. What's the process going forward to start that process? And I'll just leave it at that.
So first, I would insist that we not have the employee come up and put facts on the record yet. The town administration is working with Public Works. Jared's immediate supervisor is Brian, or?
I am, yeah.
Oh,
Brian
sorry.
Highway.
I apologize, that's right, we made that promotion, I
Yeah.
apologize. So I've reached out to the DPW director, have him meet with me about that topic, and for the DPW director to bring anybody that he thinks should weigh in on that, because the town will exercise our rights under those policies to seek remuneration if needed. That's exactly why we insisted on that policy to be in place. I want to put it out there very specifically. The Harwich Children's Fund never objected to any of that, and I think they would concur. And the fact that Circus Smirkus was willing to do it is of comfort. So the town was anticipating it, we're going to evaluate it, and we're not going to abridge any of our rights to go after remuneration if needed, without question.
Next question would be, we all know what an insurance claim timeframe looks like. It's usually not friendly. So is that something that too early to answer the question as to, do we go and repair it and then settle up with the insurer? How does that?
That's exactly the conversation I'm gonna have with
Too
staff
soon.
off the record, correct?
Did you get that invite?
I did, but then it came back as canceled.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Did you forward my invite?
What's that?
Did
No,
someone
you-
forward my
Danielle-
invite?
Danielle sent me
For Thursday? Yeah.
for Thursday at 10. I can't make it, so I was just about to send her that.
I don't know what time it
And
is
it
and
came
what
back
day
as
it is.
canceled. Check your
I'll be
email.
there.
10 a.m. Thursday.
Thank you, Jerry.
I will say, as a circus smirkus attendee ticket purchasee, they have emailed me and said, "Did you have fun? Would you like us to come back next year?" Let everybody know.
So, the board heard a
Just giving you
presentation
a heads
last night
up.
under public comment from Sheila House on the success of the program and hopes for next year. I'm confident that if they come back next year, we can have the appropriate location for them.
I like that idea, because we can't afford to shut down
Oh, no, I understand,
that field for
completely.
3 months,
Agreed.
3 of our best months,
Yeah.
to make
Yeah.
it, put it back to normal.
Yep,
Appropriate location, I like that terminology.
try to make it so everybody wins.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really
Okay,
curious where that would be.
all right, that being
You
said,
may know.
I think I did.
motion,
Oh.
motion
Motion
to adjourn.
to adjourn.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in
Thank
favor?
you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Town Administrator.
See how much Jamie trusts me. Don't forget to press record.
Don't
Get the
forget
same note, very
Eric,
small
don't forget to
conference.
shut it
Oh,
off.
see, there you go.
Save us public speaking.
Just making sure it's done properly.
Yeah, no, I.
And we didn't have to watch ourselves on the big screen.
Oh, is that what that is?
I have no idea. First time I've seen it there.